Jacob Meyer isn't here. And I thought to myself, as a councillor or as a person, what do I admire in a councillor or a person? Jacob easily could have come here and put his point forward. But what struck me about Jacob was, and I don't even know him, so it's only something that come to this morning, he thought it was more important to do family things. He had to go to Melbourne to do a course in little athletics. I don't know if he's present up there, but I know he has a lot to do. He put his family and community ahead of everything. And to me, instead of me asking him a question, I'd just like to put his point forward that...
Well, this is question time.
Well, I know, but I just thought because he's not here, I thought this would be one I'll just slip in.
Well, is it a question? Is it a question, Darryl?
Yes, I will. Certainly will be.
Let's get to it then.
I wasn't nasty when you were talking. I thought to myself, there's the bloke that I would like in council, someone that has great morals, his family comes first, community, and that there's many people who go to little athletics.
Question.
And that's the person that I'd vote for. But anyway, I just thought I'd put that in. The other thing is, between all the councillors...
Is it a question?
Oh, fair enough. Between all the councillors, I noticed that there's 150 people in the office over there working, 35 out working. Massive amount of money goes to running this council. I'll go back a few years. My dad was here, 90 on the outside, 6 in the office over there. Is there any way that you councillors could get it down to 100? I don't know how much paper actually officers can shuffle over there, but 150 against 6 seems a slight out of whack. Is there anything you councillors think you could do about that?
So I'll start with whoever wants to.
Just make the point that we're not councillors, we're actually candidates for the council. So we probably really couldn't answer the question quite as well as you would like.
I'll take that as a no.
Right.
Thanks. Look, yeah, we've had this conversation a couple of times. Staffing levels are an operational thing. There's clear definitions of where a councillor role starts and stops, and where the office of council starts and stops. And so our role is to support and guide the community with the council plan, the council vision. The executive, it's their role and the council's role to then see that through. So providing that the executive are meeting their required, I suppose, actions within that plan, it's up to the CEO how many staff she has wherever she needs to put them to get the job done to meet the community vision and the community plan. So that's not within a councillor's or candidate's scope.
Silly question.
Do you want to, anyone else wants to respond to it all?
Well, that's a difficult one for me, Darryl, because I'm not on the inside, and historically we've all said the same thing around town. You hear the same story all the time, but
well, should there be 200 in office?
No,
please, you've
I think some core things are federal government grants, and those people are employed by the federal or state governments within council, so perhaps that already cuts some of the numbers down already because they're not directly employed by council, but council auspices those jobs. So until we actually I haven't fully gone over that budgetary stuff of how that all works, so can I take it on notice and get back to you? No? Thanks.
Oh, hang on, what's that, Anthony? Albanese,
That's Q&A.
You got something to say?
Oh, yeah. Much the same. It's I don't have the privilege being a councillor.
Like at the moment we're going Werrikee down that direction. There's no public toilets down there. There's a sewer farm down there, Sonex down there. There's a real smell issue. Are you going to grandfather the rules when people want to build down there so we don't have a heap of people build down there and then all of a sudden cost the council a fortune and dealing with whoever to move the sewer farm to where? Think in the future.
So
and there's where else can we go?
I appreciate obviously all the questions, but yeah, some of these might be more of a council issue as opposed to a candidate one. But look, the sewer farm has an environmental protection overlay around it, so there is a limit to how far the town can grow. in that Maryborough North, so just north of Werrikee Rise, that, you know, to kind of, you know, look at developing that. We're doing some land use framework studies there. That has to all, you know, need to be rezoned potentially for that. We have bushfire management issues from the west. So as far as, you know, Maryborough is a little bit tricky because of the way that the bush naturally surrounds it. So as far as some of our plans go, you know, growth is more likely in Carisbrook and Talbot. Carisbrook obviously has some flooding issues there, and Talbot has sewerage. There's been some good work done with Talbot Futures and the progress of trying to get Talbot sewered. So I think, as far as growth for Maryborough, as far as the more higher density kind of residential would be, in my opinion, probably more so infill as opposed to expanding the town.
We are notionally hemmed in by forest and we can't go out this way and that way. We have plenty of scope though to go up. We have not had any of the development kind of things that have happened in other towns at all. We haven't been troubled by any of that, but you know, some of those things might come. There's plenty of room along the high street to develop apartment living and revitalise the high street by doing that sort of thing. There's a whole area there that actually overlooks the botanical gardens, and I'm just amazed why that hasn't been developed much more. So there's plenty of scope for that. As to smells, I'm really interested in hearing about that issue. I didn't know it was down there. I was on the Brooklyn Smells Committee for a long time down there in Melbourne, and we struggled to work on that issue and get that fixed. And when I was in Dalesford, there were pig farms within the town that made the place stink. And it was really amazing. Here was a town trying to become a tourist town, and it had that sort of thing going on. So things do change and things can get better, but it's really good to know that there's a potential issue in that down there. Thank you.
I agree with the other candidates regarding the Maryborough area here for development where we can't expand. The other thing too, without knowing the finer detail, it could be our services available here, sewer, water, drainage, etc. In our town. But I do agree with Wayne. It is the opportunity to develop our towns around Maryborough, skirting out to Denali, Bialaba, and back into the Talbot area and Carisbrook. So it depends on doing the studies regarding what services are available to support the growth. So that's my thoughts at this stage.
I think one of our greatest assets in this town, and that's the EBT. Have we got a new major sponsor? And if we haven't, what are the councillors or the candidates going to do in regards to getting us a major sponsor? What I think is maybe one of the state's best community development programs, because it attracts people and it brings a lot of money into this town, which I think has been neglected by the removal of the stuff for the kids to do when they're not competing, and for the locals and all the other people that come to town to enjoy Maryborough for what it is.
I've thought for a number of years that since the RACV pulled out, is the state government, could they, the departments of education and health, perhaps step up a little bit more and be considered as the lead sponsor, given that it's supposed to be like a STEM project, the science, technology, engineering, math. It would fit with that part of the state government. I mean, that doesn't mean we should preclude tracking down other large companies or engineering firms to further those avenues, but that's about all I could think of it over the years. And it'd be great to actually see, the carnival rides or something else come back for the locals to enjoy when they go down and visit the Breakthrough.
Yeah, look, I'll obviously concur. It was obviously disappointing when the RACV removed their sponsorship. We did secure, I think, 12 months with Scouts. They did 1 year, which was lovely to see. And more recently, community education don't quote me on the name, there's a community education group who's agreed to continue for another couple of years, I think. So, you know, there's been some restructure in the energy breakthrough organisation, so it's kind of been split into two groups. One group is, you know, responsible for the organisation of the event and stuff, and then another one is also, you know, like the volunteers and actually making sure that it happens on the day. And so, out of that, there was a lot of interviews and some study works done with the participating schools. I do know it got a little bit of public outcry about the carnival rides that were removed, because that was obviously a local attraction. However, when they did interview all the schools and the participants and things like, it was an additional distraction for the schools that participated. And so imagine taking, you know, being a teacher responsible for 20 kids, taking them to an event and then having sideshow distractions of festival rides and bits and pieces. It was just very, very difficult, and it took away from the event itself. And so through that consultation with the key group of people that are actually involved in it, that was part of the reason for the decision in removing having that carnival distraction. Made it a little bit easier as far as managing everything. And so that's I understand that the community were probably a little bit disappointed that happened. And so then the call then comes to, well, if we want a Maryborough show or something, then that's something kind of different. I know Elizabeth did some work trying to maybe start up an ag show, which may have helped that, but that kind of, I think, fell flat with a few disagreements with some of the people on the board. But Energy Breakthrough is, you know, a big ticket for this town. It's arguably our biggest event. We do need to keep hold of it. I can assure you, all the current councillors are aware of that, and you know, as far as council is concerned, that's one calendar event that we need to make sure we keep.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that we really need to keep on working, getting a sponsor. I was up there doing Sausage Sizzle last time, and I enjoyed it very much. I think it's a great event, and we need to keep working with that as much as we can. Thank you.
Can I add a bit more?
Yes.
I was at that same event doing sausage sizzles as well, but the last event just seemed to have lost its edge. It did not feel attractive, and there was just not the community spirit behind it. I'd really consider that the carnival should be, because it's supposed to be a whole of community event. I mean, you know that it's there for the schools, but if you don't have the community on board as well, we've lost an advantage to the town.
I've followed the Energy Breakthrough over the years. Been involved with the Maryborough Lions Club manning Hell Corner. I think everyone knows Hell Corner, which has been taken over by the Carisbrook Lions Club. I know it involves primary, secondary, special schools in that event. It's a wonderful event for the community. I know we had the local streets up in High Street, Nolan, for the community years and years ago. But I think what we need to do is take what we've learnt in the past for the event and then focus on the future of the event. I think from the area of what we're running in now is wind energy, solar. You know, it's all coming on board with us now, this day and age. And as an example, with solar, wind generation might be ideal to look at the corporate through wind generation. They do have excess funds or percentage of funds which have to be turned back into communities. I think those sort of areas could be looked at. But I strongly believe it's sort of lost its touch here in the local community. So it needs to be looked at, I think, quite finely, and we can move forward and keep the event here in the Shire. So it wouldn't take very much for someone else to grab it. A bit like the Grand Prix F1, you know, it used to be in Adelaide, went to Melbourne. So we just got to be very careful in how we actually engage the community back through the Energy Breakthrough Committee into corporate and education departments.
Just very briefly, look, I've been lucky enough to be a judge at the events and also participate, push carts and all that kind of stuff. The excitement on the kids' faces, and I suppose, yes, it is a community event, but if it's too difficult or too hard for the schools to participate, they're not going to come, and that'll kill the event. And so, whilst the community, it's very important to have the community involved in it, and they are, from the quality, the amount of volunteers that they have, the community is behind it. I do believe it's a solid event. I don't quite see that same negative perception of the EBT.
Just as an aside, maybe I'm wrong, but Oscar, somebody who's our...
Oscar Pistorius,
he's the superstar Australian on the Grand Prix. He participated here, so if we could get onto the school that he went to and follow that through, I would have thought it would be a good contact from the council's point of view.
I think council actually approached for a letter or something. I think we got a comment back, but it would have been nice to get an actual interview or something for EBT. But we did get a letter back and a correspondence which the Addy, I think, printed.
Okay.
My question is about housing. There seems to be a lot of empty houses in town. So what would you do to make them available for people to live in?
Yeah, this one's really tricky, because I suppose if people own an asset, what's council's role in forcing people to do something they don't particularly want? I think advocacy is council's probably best role in that, as far as to state and federal governments. It's more of a legislation thing for them. We saw the federal government try to introduce laws and I suppose legislation changes to help reduce taxation breaks and things along those lines to assist in kind of public housing. And that got voted out a few years ago. So I don't necessarily know if it's really something within council's remit what we can kind of do, to be honest. I think it's as far as like a public housing, trying to work with the organisations that already work in that space, provide them with the information, as much information as we can, and support them in whatever endeavours they can do to try and help the situation.
Yeah, and I agree fully with Wayne, but I think maybe council could lobby back on the state government, because I know some of their planning laws and things like that, they preclude people from having caravans or containers and sheds on blocks of land now. So for people on limited income to live on their own land, they're effectively not allowed to anymore. That's my understanding of it. So council should be the lead lobby back to the state to change their legislation or policy.
The first thing that come to mind was like Airbnb, where they're actually renting out the properties on limited leasing for Airbnb, which removes the stock for renting in the community. I understand they were looking at putting additional taxes on property owners who Airbnb. Something like that might be worth looking at, but that's just my opinion. Thank you.
I know it's a really important question, because there are actually people who live in the forests and so on, and I would love to find out how to create social housing for them. To my mind, we sometimes go back to the goals of cooperatives, housing cooperatives, where people got together and built mud brick houses and all that sort of thing. And I think the council could actually take a positive role in trying to establish those sort of things. I mean, after the war, there was a whole program where people made concrete bricks and made their own houses, and those things, those opportunities are still there for the people who want them. And I think council can actually help with that guidance. Thank you.
something we haven't talked about yet, but as I walk down the street and walk past this brand new hospital, I get a great sense of pride and a huge sense of hope. I just feel great seeing that being developed. But I guess most of us are a bit nervous about where we're going to get all the health workers and staff. But that's not just in that sector, it's across the board. So some of us are working actively right now in the wake of the documentary that was done earlier, and there's mixed reactions to that, I know, but we learnt a lot as a community. We held a mirror up to our faces and we learnt a lot, and there's some of us working right now to embrace a group of people who are starting to arrive. So my question is, what can we do? Because the school needs staff, the businesses need staff. We've got vacant houses, we've got people coming, and we also need that diversity. It makes us a richer community, and we really, really need that. So the question is, what can we do to attract workers, preferably from different cultures, to make the town more prosperous?
Well, I think we have to continue to work to welcome people in a different way, be much more welcoming, and make sure that we are known as a place of diversity and inclusion, and that we would welcome people. I think it's very difficult to get people for the jobs, because there are jobs around and it's not always easy to fill the positions. But as we become more attractive, and also as we link in more with Bendigo and Ballarat, I think that we should be part of the bus system of Ballarat, so that, a bus would come here every hour just about, and that would change us a bit as well, make us link in. At the moment we are half dormitory and half not, and we're also a very popular retirement place. The AMP recently did some work on that, and they put us up there with a big list of towns that you wouldn't normally associate Maryborough with, and that was a wonderful thing. So it's difficult. On the one hand, you want to attract people and you want to get people to work as well. So we just have to make ourselves look like a really welcoming place. Thank you.
Yeah, there's so many parts to this question, from studies that we've done working with local businesses. They might find people that can fill the roles, but then there's not suitable housing. So try to find suitable housing, we need suitable land needs to be redeveloped. There's a whole lot of chicken and egg kind of arguments in that regards. Public transport is a big one. And we see that through the studies that we had with the Youth Council, big on public transport, their ability to get around town to employment after school, that's kind of lacking. So there's housing, public transport, being close to Bendigo and Ballarat is good, but it's also very, very difficult as well. Obviously there's a lot more industries in Bendigo and Ballarat. I think, as Lowen said, increasing, our diversity. Tony, you very well know how much more richness that makes our community. So, what council can do? I suppose it's really working with those, with the key organisation. Everyone wants to work close to home. Like I said, I travelled to Ballarat for 13 years. As a shift worker, now I work locally, and I'm quite fortunate to have that, not having to have that expense and time commitment to travel. So really trying to attract the skills that our local businesses need, but we also then we need to have those societal the infrastructure to maintain, to keep those people here. So we see things like the social programs like the Youth Council, Go Goldfields, the Study Hub, another good thing. So they're all the things, I suppose, that help keep people here. So that's the things that I think would help.
You're talking about employment. I think the other side that we need to look at quite closely is employment for people. And Canvas, multinational manufacturing as an example. Logistics could be another one as well, where we need to have people coming into our shire and starting up new businesses here for employment for locals, and plus for people who have the necessary skill sets to relocate here in the shire to work within those industries. So I think that needs to be closely looked at. The other thing which when you're travelling, say, between Maryborough, Bendigo, Daly or Ballarat, which I have in the past life, it's amazing how many cars are going the opposite direction. Right? I have to flow out because there's not employment for me in my area of expertise. But like I'm saying is, when I'm on the road, it's amazing how many people are coming back this way. From Bendigo, as an example. I was travelling Bendigo the last 3 years, and I've done Ballarat for a number of years, and it's amazing the leakage, what comes out of the shire, and then what comes back in again remotely. So yeah, it's something that we should look at as collectively as shire. Thank you.
Yeah, the same as the other boys here, I've travelled to for years and years, but I think if we, as a shire, worked in with, say, Business Victoria and economic and regional development to try and, like Trevor just said, about bringing more multinationals here or to grow the job space, would be to our own benefit and attract working people from Ballarat and Bendigo to come this way too.
Just to acknowledge as well, I suppose the work from the community from Maryborough as well, like the Goldfields Festival that we had, that's another way, I suppose, that we could have that social inclusion. Had so many different organisations in Princes Park for the day, the amount of people that got out and was kind of building those connections, I think, was a fantastic way of trying to build that social inclusion as well in the shire.
So a lot of the things we've heard spoken about today, social housing, employment, infrastructure, all feed into the concept of marketing. So my question is, over the next term for council, what would the candidates' response to the challenge to market Maryborough's strengths?
Yeah, it's tricky because I don't necessarily know if you kind of appreciate the richness of Maryborough until you live here, to be honest. It has copped its fair share of hard knocks over the years, it's sometimes disheartening to hear potentially some of the words that have been used, but if we reflect on, let's say, the documentary that had good reviews and bad reviews. My personal view of that was, I think it actually left the shire positive at the end of the final episode because of the way that they reflected upon the friendliness and the welcomeness of our community, and so I think that's a good thing. As far as tourism goes, we can't really stand alone by ourselves. We're currently working on some plans as far as tourism advisory boards, and Chris would know a lot more about that than what I would. Things like the World Heritage Bid, which that puts Maryborough on the map. So there are lots of things out there. I suppose it's really just our way of how do we. I suppose the question is how do we market that? And to be honest, I think. I don't know. I'm not a marketing person. I'm really. This is probably not my strong suit. I think just the positive messages from community members. On the downside though, you go onto any of the Goldfields Facebook pages, and it's that's quite damaging to our image, and so I think sometimes the community needs to take a little bit of ownership in how the Shire is represented as well.
Our tourism has got plenty of scope to be built up. We're not doing any of the winter warming stuff where people just want to come up and sit beside a fire. I was down in Melbourne Well, it was a few years ago now when I moved up here, and I asked one of the Melbourne tourist ambassadors, have they got anything on Maryborough? And her reply was, why would you want to go there? So I think we've actually got to take a really proactive role in going down to Melbourne, almost opening up a shop. There's wineries, there's food people who go to the big buildings and set up in the lobbies so that the influential people of Melbourne actually get to see wines and so on from different regions, and we need to be doing that. We've got some great companies up here with wonderful products, and we need to actually be setting up exhibitions and trade shows down in Melbourne or around the world showing off our wares. Thank you.
We need to showcase ourselves. I agree with the other candidates. We need to network is the big key thing. Communication. Tap into a number of different groups, say in Melbourne, industrial, manufacturing, tourism, export of products out of our area. That's my quick response. It's vital that we create those networks within different groups in Melbourne to entice people in manufacturing and other wares to come up here and establish themselves in the Shire. It's wonderful these days with the internet. You don't have to be in Melbourne. You can be remotely anywhere and run your business. So we need some other businesses and to come up here into the Shire. It's a matter of networking into the Melbourne groups. Thank you.
Thanks,
And just add on to Trevor then about IT development, industry, people can work from home. Well, there's perhaps we need our economic development strategy to include those kinds of businesses as well. And I know it's, from what I understand, the strategy at the moment is not being actively promoted, and don't know how many hours go into economic development, but we need probably a couple of officers appointed to promote that. Okay.
I just want to ask, what would you do as councillors or future councillors to get staff back into the office here in Maryborough? The problem is, with permits, buildings and everything else, you go to the Shire office, it's not the customer service staff, but it's the back office staff. There's nobody there, you've got to wait a week, 2 weeks. The permits for people building buildings and houses in the town is very expensive, and there's no response. So what would you do to get staff back into the office and get the council moving in this area?
We need to have a review of actually, with the CEO, sit down and figure out what actually is going wrong.
Challenge we all face, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is I understand through Wayne, there is a charter of how many days they need to respond to particular permits here in the council. It's a matter of, I suppose, coming back to the staff here in the council and KPIs and working through those systems where we're able to look at really how long does it take to process a permit? Can we do a little bit better? Can we do it in a shorter time? And what needs to go into that process as well, environmental, water catchments, etc. So there is a lot of things that they have to take into account, but let's look at how we can reduce those time factors. And it's communicating back from our Shire here to the public who's putting the applications. Thank you.
Can I just add that that thing was being raised, it's eroding trust from the community to the Shire as well. Because in the last week I've spoken to 2 different business owners and they've had great concerns about the one had to spend an extra $30,000 on appeasing planning permit approvals and all those kinds of things because they weren't told beforehand. So it's a bit deeper issue than just actually having the permit issued. There needs to be more consultation before people even put their things in so they know where they stand.
You know, on one argument, someone's saying we need to cull 50 people out of the office, and another person says we need more people to kind of meet the services that we need. So it's a bit of a catch-22. And every person costs money, so there's a whole budgetary thing in that. Yeah, look, I suppose particularly planning has been quite tricky. You know, we've unfortunately things like the Victorian Big Build and stuff along those lines. You know, there's been a massive vacuum to Melbourne for planning officers and things along those lines. So staffing levels themselves have been quite tricky, and they can obviously push time frames and stuff like that out. Also with changing of staff. Some of our systems, sorry, I'll get that. So upgrading our customer service management systems is one way to help address that, which they're currently going through some work for. So yeah, that's probably really trying to improve the systems that the officers work with to increase efficiencies, and I suppose a bit more of a computerised based system.
I feel that town planning people need to be encouraged to realise that they are part of a partnership with the people who are applying, and they need to be much better customer trained. I was part of when the PTC suddenly realised that their passengers were actually meant to be customers and clients and were meant to be friends, and I was part of that in the 90s. And just now in the ethics committee for the Department of Health, I've been pushing that we are partners with the people who are applying, and that we're all meant to be working together. And I really feel that that attitude needs to come into town planning much more. I'm not sure about here, but I know elsewhere you feel like you're enticed into a situation and that then they just throw all this stuff at you. I don't see why councillors can't get together and almost pre-approve a project if it's sound, and then the officer's job is to actually make it work. Thank you.
Just a question, really pretty much on behalf of somebody who requested I put this in if she couldn't make it here. As candidates and councillors, will you listen to your constituents and work on their behalf regarding their concerns, working towards a positive outcome? Because I think that's a big concern with people not having that happen. Thank you.
Yes, I hope I can do that properly with people. I would also be looking at why people are having the problems and what's underneath some of their issues, because there may be more to what they're talking about than just a drain or something like that. I'm not sure that councillors can intercede too much, but you know, I will learn that as we go. But I certainly intend to listen as much as I can and hear what is being said. Thank you.
Yeah, and I suppose it's also defining, you know, there's obviously outcome. Not everything's always going to be in the favour of the council or in the favour of the constituent. And so I think, you know, it's a very important role for council to have to try to manage that relationship too, because it's not always going to be 100% yes or 100% no. So, yeah, like 100%, you know, currently my phone's always on, emails, you know, read them daily. So, you know, that's one of the major roles as being a councillor, is to address those issues of the community, obviously assist them to try to resolve them themselves, and if they can't, obviously then be that conduit between the organisation and the community member to get a satisfactory result.
Well, I've only recently just become aware of the councillor request forms, I think it is, that's what they're called.
Yeah.
Where constituents contact the councillor, and then the councillor passes that on to the CEO. So I intend to make full use of those forms when I see them.
This issue is to be a voice for people who don't have a voice. In other words, quite open, always available, in the sense of my door is always open. It doesn't matter how small or large the question is. I'll always answer always answer the question if I know the answer. I'm not going to give you an answer to make you happy. I'll give you the correct answer. If I can't find that answer or don't have that answer, I will outsource and find that answer and get that back to the resident. So I think it's really crucial, the response times as well. I don't want to answer that question, say, in a week's time. It needs to be done in a couple of days, or indicate to the person who's asking the question, to give them an update. Sorry, I haven't got the answer now, but I should have it early next week. And it's a communication thing. If I don't respond, that puts a lot of questions into the person who's asking the question. Thank you.
Question I'd like to ask, when I heard Wayne talking about Meet the Neighbours, would you councillors next time, if you try to approve something like that, because in Melbourne we have been described up here as now rednecks, racist. I work in the country construction industry, and as soon as they know most of them know we're from up this way, and that show didn't do us any good whatsoever. So if you were going to put up a show like that again, would you guys make sure that we had, you've got a policy for starters, which wasn't followed, I don't believe, but then would you have on it right to review before it went to market, or would you just leave it like it was and they put it in as they wanted to put it in?
Look, obviously everyone has their individual views on how that worked. You know, I know there was some concerns that the draft, I suppose, would have been nice to see and provide feedback for. You know, the original document, the documentary was planned to be done through the Committee for Maryborough was the original ones that kind of instigated this in regards to staffing levels and things along those lines, and council could kind of either agree to support it or not. You're either a part of it or you weren't, and so council took the approach that it would be better to be a part of it, and then to be able to utilise some of the information that come from that to help us grow as a shire and identify some shortcomings, some learnings, which I think the documentary did. So in an ideal world, would you be able to review it? Yes. Where that stands as far as the production company and the media, to me that's not. I don't know the answer to that one. Sorry.
In 1987, I wrote a book called How Media and Advertising Are Killing You, and I consider myself to be pretty media savvy, and I could have seen that coming a long, long way away. So I think there was a naivety that somebody came to the council and said, we're going to do something wonderful for you, and there was no way known that that was going to happen. So we really do need to take our own work in that area into our own hands and produce the good stuff for ourselves. Look, I reckon it could have been a lot worse. If they had actually twigged to some of the things that they could have said, it could have been a lot worse. So it would never happen again if I was on the council, I can promise you that.
What I would look at is the finer detail in the contracts and modify the contracts. Don't accept the contracts if it's one-sided. I know in my life going out to suppliers of equipment is they have to abide by your contracts involvement as well, because generally contracts are one-sided, probably 90% their way and 10% your way. So it's a matter of detailing and looking at those contracts in a finer, run the fine-tooth comb over them, and then if you don't agree with anything in there...
Wayne McHale, I'm a local. Quite a few of you already have said that issues dealing with council is a problem, it's not in our area. What I'd like to know is in reference to controlling the CEO, there was a process put in place which is KPIs. The KPIs are actually put in line under the Local Government Act and Council's own policy. First I'd like to know is, will you give an undertaking to adhere to those KPIs? And the second part of the question, would you permit those KPIs to be made public to the public who actually pay to employ the CEO?
My understanding is that that's all part of how the Local Government Act works, or the legislation is that the KPIs they're already instituted in there. So I guess it has to be a yes. Okay, I'll commit to that.
Yeah, I don't have any particular issue in publicising the CEO KPIs. There was some I think, been some advice around some confidentiality bits and pieces. We've got a CEO Employment Matters Committee who advise on that, and so would take their advice. But personally, I don't have any issues with publicising the KPIs of the CEO.
No, I don't have any problem about KPIs. I've been a sports coach, and I've actually instituted systems where players can be evaluated that weren't there before. So I have no problem with that approach to things. But of course, with confidentiality may have some issues, maybe in there occasionally. But I don't think anybody's going to mind about a KPI these days.
In my working life, I've been exposed to KPIs constantly. They are a very important document for employment, and the KPIs have to be true KPIs, and they have to be achievable. With KPIs, they're set for 12 months, they're reviewed every 6 months or sooner, just to see how the person's tracking, and guidance for that person.
I just have an issue with publishing the KPIs. Everybody in employment has a KPI, but they're not published to the general public.
Just my thought is the Shire or the council is a public entity. It's a little bit different than a private industry.
Well, KPIs are put in place so that people's performance can be judged, and they're told where they're falling down in their thing. They get chances the same as in any employment, where you get a verbal warning, a written warning, and then you go through conciliation if you're not living up to your job. I think going to the council is fine, but I'm not sure about the public KPI, publishing public.
Transparency
isn't the answer the KPIs are out there, because that's generally the same for most of them. It's a question of whether they've been able to address and achieve the level that you're expecting as a councillor. So that, I'm assuming there'd be some parts of that wouldn't be necessarily let out to everybody, but the actual KPIs I would have thought would be public.
Public. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Only 3 people can answer this question. Wayne, you can't, because you do support it, and it's about the big issue that everybody was asked about. No one mentioned flooding at Carisbrook, and it's so it's a 2-part question. It's sort of, we're in wards. Maybe that's because people are thinking about their responsibility as councillors as a ward councillor, or as a council you make a decision together. So the question is, council made a decision about the report, the professional report they got at its last meeting. So the question is, would you, as a continuing, if you were elected as a councillor, would you support council's decision about the Carisbrook flooding? And if not, how would you go about the risk? Fred Spain mentioned that he sees Carisbrook as being a Eugowra situation where there's a catastrophic flood in 2022. How do you see going about reassuring the people of Carisbrook, even though you're not their ward councillor?
If I'm a councillor, the decision is made collectively right across the board, and I have my input as well. But the other thing is, it's going to be a big learning for me to look back in history, the studies which have been done, and the knowledge which is out there in the community, and what has been captured here within the council. So for me, as a candidate, there's a lot of learning for me. But like I'm saying in my notes is, I'm willing to listen, I'm willing to learn, listen to other people's opinions and findings, and then make a collective decision from there. Thank you.
I'm no engineer, and I know there's other engineering-minded people who have been on those committees, and I think I would put my trust in those persons before myself.
Yeah, I'm assuming most people have read the report. The levy was designed by experts. It's been reviewed by experts. It did have some community contentions about it. Council went down the path of an independent review, which is always a good thing to do after especially a major infrastructure project like that. We agreed to the community's choice of reviewer. We accepted the report. We've implemented an implementation plan for the recommendations that come from it. So, I suppose it's really about working with community groups and trying to get that those messages across that we understand the situations. We want to obviously make sure that things are constantly improved. Things are going to be changing. Stuff like obviously the communication between landholders and organisations in the area. The Bush Telegraph, using things like Yugawa. That was 150 years between extreme floods. I think we've got the benefit of modern technology on our side, so keeping records and stuff like that up to date. Hopefully that answers the question.
I think it's probably one of many issues that are going to come up with the climate change and how we adapt to it, and there will be mistakes made as we go along. We're going to have to review just about everything in the whole Shire to do with climate change, and if we can learn from the process that's going on down there, we may be able to reduce the climate anxiety in the first place, or separate it out from the very practical areas that we have to then deal with. But there's going to be a lot more of these kind of issues all over the place.
The whole Carisbrook levy issue just highlighted for me the contention in the society about the lack of trust between council and the residents. I think that should also be a focus of what the next elected council has to focus on, rebuilding that trust which has been lost and harmed and maimed by accusations and and things in that vein. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay. Well, so that does conclude the first session today. So I don't think I need that. So thank you to again the four councillors who made their time available today, and we look forward to seeing what happens over the next month or so. So, in relation to all the people here, all the residents, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for coming along, and hopefully today's given you some basis to form whatever opinions you've got and votes you're going to make. So, thank you very much for attending. You can stay for the next one too, if you wish.
Thank you, Kelvin, for dedicating your Sunday to this.
Thank you.
Stand and get Trevor, can I get you on the floor?
Did you feel conflicted, Kelvin?
No, I think
Did you have a conflict?
Did I?
Oh, you got to look at the camera.
Let's look at the camera. Wonderful, thank you.